This is James Taylor, and you're listening to The Creative Life. The Creative Life podcast is a show created for you, the creative. If you're looking for inspiration, motivation, and advice while at home, at work, or on your daily commute, then this show is for you. Each episode brings you a successful creative, whether that's a musician, writer, artist, designer, performer, educator, or creative entrepreneur. They share their journey, their successes, their failures, their creative process, their insights, and much, much more. In this episode, I speak with drummer Charles Burchell, and we talk about music as a movement, teams, and hip-hop diplomacy. Enjoy this episode. Hey, it's James Taylor, and I'm excited to bring you our featured guest today, Charles Burchell. And Charles is a musician, educator, and social activist from New Orleans. He has toured with Grammy-nominated artists Christian Scott, Delfayo Marsalis, and Donald Harrison. He has a passion for music education, having attended community music programs himself growing up. Charles is also a recent graduate of the Harvard Graduate School of Education, Masters in Arts in Education program, and is currently teaching and performing in New York City. And today he's joining us from El Salvador. So, Charles, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, James. Thank you for having me.
So, share with our listeners what's going on in your world just now.
Okay. So, currently at the moment, I'm in San Salvador. I'm doing a program called the Next Level program, which is a partnership between the University of North Carolina and the U.S. State Department. And basically, it's a hip-hop diplomacy program. They take 25 hip-hop artists who are also educators, and they send them to 5 different countries around the world. And basically, we work with local artists here, and we work with the youth here who are interested in hip-hop and who may already be involved with hip-hop. And we do a bit of a cultural exchange. And I've been down here for the last 2 weeks working with professional artists down here, as well as working with young folks. And it's been a very, very amazing, life-changing experience.
So hip-hop diplomacy, I've never heard that expression before. Is this a new thing that the State Department's doing? How does it work?
Yeah, it's fairly new, but it's actually... The hip-hop component of it is fairly new, but the program is actually a very old program that started in the late 40s and the early 50s, which was originally called the Jazz Ambassadors Program.
Which, like Dave Brubeck and guys like that
right,
back in the day.
Exactly. So this is kind of the modern extension of that program. The State Department now has, I don't even know, like a lot of cultural diplomacy programs. And the hip-hop diplomacy program that started with Next Level is only 2 years old. This is their second year, and this is their first time in Central America. So it's a very, very new program, but it's built off the backs of those earlier Jazz Ambassadors programs with the same idea to, have a cultural exchange. And hip-hop has become an international language. So they've gone to so many different places around the world and found a community where people were interested in hip-hop, where people were rapping, people were making beats, people were DJing, people were dancing. So it's really, the way I feel about it, it's really an attempt to try to connect with people and speak a common language and try to exchange ideas. And for me, I believe it's the only real way to make change in the world, is to have these type of exchanges.
It's so important. I mean, I was at an event recently. It was actually in London. And there was someone there from the Russian embassy. I think it was the Russian ambassador there. And he was saying that at the very worst times when relationships have been bad between Russia and America, or Russia and the European Union or the UK, and where they've cut, so diplomatic ties have been cut, business ties have been cut. But the one thing that always remains is the cultural part, with artists going back and forth. And sometimes it never makes the headlines, it never makes the news, but having that way for people across cultures to communicate with each other, where some of the things we see in the news, things are kind of maybe thrown out of shape a little bit, is so important.
No, very, very, very important. The guys who run this program like to joke, but in very serious ways. Say jazz ended the Cold War.
Yeah.
Which I agree to. I really believe this type of work is does more than a lot of like the politicians and just that whole the political arena. I really feel like cultural exchange is really the way in which you can change communities and help communities from various parts of the world kind of connect and understand their common humanity. So I really I can be very critical of the United States and governments and all that type of thing, but programs like this is when I'm really like, okay, good, tax dollars are being spent well.
So take us back. How did you first get learning music and playing, and at what point in your life did you go, this is what I want to do for a living?
Okay. Well, when I was a little kid, I remember, like James mentioned, I'm from New Orleans, Louisiana, and New Orleans has a deep history of music. So there's a lot of blues, gospel, jazz, R&B, everything. And I remember growing up and sitting in church with my mom and always just watching the drummer, just always watching the drummer since the age of 4. And I remember my mom wanted to try me out with a drum lesson and it didn't work. And I didn't pick up drumsticks until I was about 11 or 12. But from that moment, I started practicing and I got really, really into it. And I was introduced to jazz music. And my school just happened to have a jazz band. So I started playing the drum set. And by that time, I was about to enter high school. There's this amazing high school called the New Orleans Center for Creative Arts, which has a really, really amazing list of alumni like Harry Connick Jr. and Wynton Marsalis, and all the Marsalises and Christian Scott and Donald Harrison, and just all these amazing jazz musicians have come through this program. So I was able to work with really, really master musicians and educators. And it wasn't really until after Hurricane Katrina that I actually decided that I wanted to do music as my career. Once I got back after the storm, once I returned to New Orleans, there's this pianist named Ellis Marsalis, who's the father of Wynton Marsalis and all the Marsalis clan. And he was playing in Snug Harbor, which is like the local jazz club that everyone goes to. And this is maybe 4 months after Hurricane Katrina has like completely ravaged New Orleans. So it's pretty desolate around the club, but inside the club, the 5 or 10 people who were there, we felt like nothing had ever changed. Like we felt like nothing was wrong. And I think being young and feeling how no matter what my actual environment was, that I can go and hear music and temporarily be released from that and really, really understand that was pretty profound. And it's from that moment where I was like, okay, I see now that music is more powerful than just, oh, I want to put this on to relax to or go to the party or whatever. It does have the power to really affect people. And so probably around like 16 or 17, I was like, I really, really want to do this. And from there, I just started studying really, really seriously. And then I went to school for it and started traveling the world and having all these experiences, which really helped show me the power of music. And that, it wasn't just, oh, I can make a nice song or I can make a beat, but it was, I can affect people. I can help them, change their lives, or I can help give them relief from their situation. So for me, it was that kind of learning the human connection part of music that kind of solidified, like, okay, I want this to be my career.
And for listeners, people that are listening just now that don't know specifically about New Orleans or New Orleans jazz, what is different about it, especially rhythmically as a drummer, from let's say from New York jazz or kind of West Coast thing? Is there something that when people hear they should be kind of listening for that's distinctly New Orleans?
Well, yeah, definitely. So New Orleans, for those who don't know, is the birthplace of jazz and the birthplace of a lot of American music, like R&B and rock and roll, and a lot of American music has its roots in New Orleans. And one of the big things that makes New Orleans jazz special is that it comes out of the marching tradition. So it comes out of what we call second line bands, which are, if you ever see videos of Mardi Gras, you'll see these big bands outside with a lot of brass instruments and a lot of drummers like marching through the streets. Those are called brass bands, and the early jazz in New Orleans started from that culture. So the drums in particular have this kind of syncopation that's based off of marching music, but is combined with all type of influences from Brazil and Cuba and Africa. So you have a way more syncopated approach to playing the drums, and for me, the best way I can describe it is that it has a certain bounce. that makes you dance more than any of the more than any of the other styles. I think it's it's just more connected to the source, and the source was basically the source was in New Orleans. Is one of the only places in the United States where the African slaves were allowed to play drums, and they only were allowed to play for 1 day a week. But you also had the first population of free people of color. So you had the first people, people of African descent, getting access to European instruments. So taking, their traditions from Africa and then applying it to marching, John Sousa marching music. You get this culture and you get this like kind of mutation that forms the early jazz music. And so growing up in New Orleans, you hear the source way before you hear, Charlie Parker and Miles Davis and Thelonious Monk and anything that's considered more modern. You hear the source of where it all comes from, and I think that as a drummer, kind of it roots you a little heavier and wanting to make the music dance and feel good.
And do the kids that are growing up in New Orleans today, do they still kind of get the kind of music education that reminds them of the musical heritage, the importance of where this music comes from, the sources you were talking about, or have the music programs been kind of decimated in the same way that the actual city was when Katrina came in?
I would say it's pretty mixed because before the storm, there wasn't a lot of funding for a lot of music education programs, and honestly, after the storm, there were a lot of programs that I participated in, and it's always a challenge with New Orleans because we live in our state, Louisiana it has a history as far as the way the government works with not being the most honest. So it's a struggle for a lot of programs to get funding from the state. So there are a lot of nonprofit programs and after-school programs that really try to fill in the gaps and educate people about the rich history of New Orleans music. But I can't say that it's well integrated in public schools. So there is this kind of dichotomy where it's like you are in this rich historical place that has such a deep cultural history, but if you're not really willing to search for that, a lot of times you're only going to scratch the surface. So I would say for the music student that is really really interested in music and seeks out these programs, there's a lot of resources there, but it comes with that same kind of disconnection where it's like it's not just there in the school. Some schools they have great music education programs, but it's not across the board. So there's always definitely a need for more programs and more funding for programs and just the normal schools, just so that you don't have to be a trained musician to want to pursue and understand the history of New Orleans. So I would say it's there, but it definitely, there definitely needs to be improvement.
And what would you say is your biggest weakness as a music artist and as a creative person?
My biggest weakness, I would say my biggest weakness is adopting the ideology that the independent musician today has to do everything themselves. And a lot of people, since the proliferation of the internet and the fact that everything is, you can put your music online without needing a record company and you have basically instant access to the world, there's the idea that, okay, the artist now is responsible for being your own booking agent and being your own promotion company and writing the songs and recording the record and doing all these things. And it's possible to do that, but as I've gotten more experience and traveled and met more people, all the independent artists I've met who've become successful or have had these successful careers, they all had a team.
Yeah.
They all had a team of people who was working with them. They all had a team of people who were supporting and investing in them. And each person had their role so that the artist could really focus on making the music, which is the old model when you had a record company. The artist is worrying about the music, someone else is worrying about promoting it, making it sell, doing whatever else. But in this day, I think a lot of artists, a lot of young artists and new artists are realizing this, are thinking that, oh, I have to do everything. I have to, be my social media person. I have to do this, and this. And I think a certain amount of that is really necessary. But for me, I think I've put so much attention and to trying to figure that out without working just solely on my music and I guess using my music to give me those resources, which is a shift that I'm making now. That I see that okay, it really does take a team, and that team doesn't necessarily mean the team of musicians you're working with. It means other people who have the skill sets that you need to help get your music to the next level.
Yeah.
So I think for me that's kind of my biggest shift because a lot of times for a lot of my career I've been trying to do everything myself, and I'm now like switching from that mentality, and a lot of things are changing and opening up for me.
Yeah, I mean that importance of, I mean, it can't be stressed enough, that importance of team, and absolutely, you say, people can kind of do all these different things themselves. Distribution is different. You can be using social media in an effective way. You can be doing your own bookings as well. But it reminds me a little bit of actually what great film directors do today, which is they'll bring together a team of people, maybe to work on a specific project or around a specific time, and they may work with the same editor on multiple projects, but they may work with a different cinematographer, and you pull together the people you need because those people have the skills that you could do some of those things yourself, but those people are really great at it, so it's just the team thing is more fluid, I would say, today.
Right.
And what would you say on the flip side? What would you say is your biggest strength?
I think one of my biggest strengths is seeing potential in people and trying to help nurture that. Whether as like an artistic setting, but also in like from an educational sense. Like one thing that I've really enjoyed is that I've gotten to travel and tour the world with a lot of my friends in my own groups, and I've been able to build projects with people who, when I met them, might not have pursued certain directions in music that I was trying to pursue, but just because I had faith in them and I had this kind of belief that, oh no, you try this, you might like it. It kind of opened up new worlds and new possibilities for these artists. And the same thing from the educational sense, like being able to talk to a student and expose them to something that completely changes their perspective of music and their reality, and it makes them want to pursue their music seriously or pursue it in a different manner. I think for me, that's been something that I've been really successful at. Is just, in short, inspiring people to reach their own potential, like seeing the potential in others and just doing what I can to help support that. Not necessarily like I'm the guru and like people come to me and I tell them what to do, but just being able to see people's potential and help and do my best to be supportive. I think I really think that's a really important skill because people have done that for me. A lot of my mentors have been able to see the best in me when I couldn't see it and and provide the right resources to push me in a direction that's gotten me to a lot of the success I have now.
And then your time, obviously, you recent graduate at Harvard on doing the Masters in Arts and Education program as well. How did that change you, or did that give you specific kind of learnings to become a better teacher and a better inspirer of other people?
Well, that program was really amazing, and I had been teaching ever since I graduated high school, and I would go back. I went to school. I went to New England Conservatory before I went to Harvard. So I was studying music in Boston, and every summer I would go back to New Orleans and teach. And eventually, while I was still in New England Conservatory, I started doing these community outreach programs where I would teach in schools and do private lessons, and then set up workshops. And I was also traveling and doing master classes at different festivals. So when I was about to finish my undergrad, I was like, you know what, I'm really doing a lot of education work, and I felt that, I guess because of the way I grew up in New Orleans, where there were so many people who were willing to mentor young musicians, I felt that it was my responsibility to be able to teach and be able to be that type of resource for people. So when I went to Harvard, it was really to study more about the field of education and the field of arts education, and see what I can learn to be a more effective teacher. And I honestly say that program, it definitely gave me a lot of the foundation from my teaching methods now, but it also it just opened me up to a lot of opportunities, and I've been able to do a lot of amazing teaching work since then. And I think without that program, I wouldn't have been able to navigate the world of arts education the way I've been able to, because the way I teach her, I basically teach exactly what I'm passionate about, and that wasn't always easy, but I had the skill set to really, really, I guess, teach music in a manner in which that it just doesn't, I'm not just teaching you technical skills, but I'm trying to teach you life skills, and I'm also trying to, really affect you, and in a certain my own not selfish way, but my ulterior motives is that I'm trying to affect social change, and I believe that education is one of the most effective tools to do that. So,
because right at the top of
yeah.
the show, I described you as a musician, an educator, and a social activist. So, what role does music have in social activism?
Well, I think if you look at a lot, especially if you look at the last century, a lot of social movements and a lot of periods in time, when you look back at them, you can really, really listen to the music and hear the pulse of the society. You can really hear the cultural climate in the music, and I think the music, in many ways, helps to shape the ideologies of people growing up in times that are challenging, and helps to give them a sense of identity. So for me, music is I see it especially with a lot of students I teach. Music has a huge role in how a young person shapes their identity and how they create their worldview. So if they have a narrow view of music and they only let certain things in, then a lot of times their perspective of how they're viewing the world is very, very narrow. So for me, what I like to do is meet students where they're at, whether it's, okay, I really like hip hop, or I really like drum and bass, I really like reggaeton, whatever, and try to use that connection to open and expand the student to hearing more, to learning more about music, and to also challenge them on why they listen to certain type of music, and help them to foster conversations around that and around their situation. And a lot of times when I'm creating music with students and students are writing their own song, I'm encouraging them to tell their own story and really express their own voice. And I think a lot of what makes a lot of music powerful, especially if you listen to music from the 60s, early 60s, late 60s, early 70s, is that people were really, unafraid to express their voice. And when you can find yourself in a song and you can identify with yourself in a song and you can identify a certain experience, I think that really does a lot to help you shape your identity in the world and shape the way that you're going to move in the world. So for me, being able to talk to these kids who don't, who may not have a lot of resources, may not have a lot of money, but have a lot of influences around them that can steer them either in good directions or bad directions. I try to be like an intermediary to say, okay, I understand what you listen to, I understand what you like. Now let's just open that up and let's see what else is possible. Because for me, the biggest thing is about showing people that there are no limitations. And I think a lot of times in many education systems, we try to tell students that, okay, some people like, yeah, you can do a million things, but no, you can only do 5 or 6 things. So through music, I try to show like, look, anything is possible. This artist you like, well, guess what? They started with nothing and look what they did. Oh, you like this artist, but guess what? They sampled this guy. Oh, you haven't heard this guy's music? Let me show you the Beatles. Let me show you Bob Marley. Let me show you these other things that you didn't even realize you're being influenced by. So long story short, I really feel that music is a way to just connect with people instantly and then start a conversation. And that conversation, has the potential to change people's lives because it changed my life.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the area the place that you grew up, but certainly where I grew up, there was usually only two ways out. There was either music or sports. That was the way that
Right.
most kids, like in my neighborhood, that's how you kind of got out and did well for yourself. So one question I always have, I mean, this thing about social activism in music, where you mentioned those kind of great eras of social activism, like in 60s and 70s, and 50s, 60s, 70s, and it was felt that music was a very central part of that now. But it does feel, though, like when I hear a lot of music now, there isn't a lot of bite to it. There isn't, there's a lot of songs about love and making money and all that stuff, but there doesn't seem to be as much about social causes. I mean, there's obviously a lot of crazy things going on in the world, but that it doesn't feel for me like it's translating to songwriters writing those songs about those things. Most writers seem to write songs around like just other themes.
Yeah, I agree and slightly disagree, but not really. I think it's just there are less and less artists doing it, and I think a lot of popular music, there are definitely less and less artists who are trying to write about anything that's a social thing. I think the problem is that music is such a big industry that's equated with entertainment. So people want to be entertained. People, they don't want to be preached to. A lot of people just, I want to put my music on. I don't want to think about anything. And I think what modern artists have to find the balance of is how to be entertaining but also have a social message. Because a lot of my favorite artists, one example I always use is like Marvin Gaye and the What's Going On record. Like, that was a popular record, and I've heard that record since I was a kid. And it was only until like 5 or 6 years ago that I realized there's a social commentary in that music. So I think there are ways to do it where you can make a record that sounds good, is popular, that people can dance to and enjoy, but have a social message in it. I think the problem is this generation has a credible ability to connect and disconnect like simultaneously. Like, we can be connected to the entire world through the internet, but we can also still be very, very, very disconnected from each other. And as far as empathy is concerned, so I think a lot of musicians, a lot of young artists, they're trying to make a popular song, and they're just trying to be popular, And I think when you have that mindset, it's not really about the music. It's not about what you're saying. It's about, can I make something catchy enough that people will buy my record? And I think there are a few artists who use their platform to really speak about things, but when they do, it's very, very powerful. The most recent thing for me, 2 records, D'Angelo's Black Messiah and Kendrick Lamar's To Pimp a Butterfly. These 2 records that came out in the last year, for me, there's a lot of social commentary, but it's done in such an elegant way that listeners can choose to engage with that side of the record or not, but it's there, and it has a heavy weight to it. And I think today it's just about being brave enough to do that. And for me, Kendrick is such a great example because he had a very, very popular record in 2012, and he rose to such a level of like stardom that I think it was expected or anticipated that his next record would be something that was very mainstream and very, media friendly, that, he'd have a lot of radio singles, and he basically made a jazz fusion record.
Yeah.
And, talked about a lot of issues that are going on today. And I think that type of bravery shows that, hey, it is possible to be popular but also say something. And I definitely think a lot of independent artists are catching that wave more so than maybe the mainstream artists. But I think it's a shift. I think the music is shifting. I think it is opening up because honestly, I think the world requires it. There's a lot of craziness going on in the world, and eventually people are like, okay, I can't hear the same song about your girl or about this one night stand or about this or this. I need something, with more substance.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've spoken to different artists and songwriters who deal with it in different ways. Some of them almost have a deal with, if they are with a label, they have a deal with them. I'll make one album that's like totally dance floor popular, and I want to make another album. The album after that is going to be something. It's going to be more about what I want to say, more artistic. More about a message I want to put into the world. And that's one way of doing it. And the other one is, like you spoke about, Marvin Gaye, is those geniuses out there that can write things and make records that you can listen to on multiple levels. You can listen to just as like, it's just a great album. You just, musically it's great. And then you can go that next level down where you listen to actually really what they're saying, what the music's about, the message, and it opens up an entirely new way to you as well.
Exactly. That to me is my goal. My goal is not to be very obscure and, preaching from the corner, but to find a way to really, make people dance, make people have fun, but also say something. One thing for me, I think the uh, one thing I really focus on, because I was preparing for this interview, and I was thinking about song lyrics, and one song lyric I was thinking about was one thing about music is when it hits, you feel no pain. When I first heard that lyric, I actually heard it in this song called "It's Bigger Than Hip Hop" by this hip hop group called Dead Prez, and I've also heard it. I've heard Kanye West say it, and I've heard various artists in the hip hop community say it, and I got it, but I finally heard Trench Town, which is the Bob Marley song, where they got that lyric from. And the groove on that, like on that song, when they sing these lyrics, it makes so much sense. It makes so much sense. And I think that's kind of the power, really, of music. It's like you can really take people's pain away. You can really like give people a moment of escape from their reality, from whatever the craziness of their reality might be. And I think when more artists hone in on that power and realize that they have that power, then I think the music, you know, I think the music will change to really, really not necessarily reflect our environment completely, but act as a balm for the environment, and not one to completely disconnect you and just have you raving on the dance floor, but one to uplift you despite the craziness that's going on in the world.
And tell us about a time in your life when you worked on a project, you gave it your all, you gave it your heart and your soul, but for whatever reason it didn't work out like you'd hoped. And more importantly, what were the lessons that you learned from that experience?
Oh, I have many things like that. That's why for the people who are listening to this, they'll be like, "Who is Charles Burchell?" Because many of my projects I give up, not give up on, but for various reasons, they might not come to fruition. That was a thing in the past. Now I luckily have records that are about to come out, and it's good things. But uh, I remember I had a band in high school. I had a hip hop band, and we worked on many records. We had one that came out, but we spent years and years and years working on a record, and this was maybe like 2007, 2008, where having a hip hop band was still kind of obscure, and the roots weren't as popular as they are now. So it wasn't a sound that people were completely comfortable with hearing. And I just remember, writing songs, like demoing songs on my keyboard and trying to teach the band and paying for studio time, like, doing whatever little gigs we had to do in high school to save money to be able to book a studio. That entire process taught me so much, even though the music never came to fruition. Just that process of writing and demoing the music and workshopping it with the group, and then being able to record it and take it through post-production. That entire process has taught me how to make records, and has taught me how to teach students how to make records. So even though I had this passion, my passion project when I was in high school, like I had this group and I was just so into it, and it never that group dissolved. It never became anything. The lessons I learned are how to make a record, how to book shows, how to really be a professional musician. I learned through that experience. So for me, although no one will ever hear the band Floopy Head, that experience was very amazing for me, and it kind of was the foundation of, for me, learning how to create records and learning how to market a band.
And tell us about, in this journey you've had in music and teaching music, tell us about any aha ideas or light bulb moments, those moments in your life where you've had some moment of kind of clarity when, oh, okay, this is what I need to be doing, this is the path I need to be going, this is the decision I need to be making.
I'll definitely say I've had a couple aha moments. Definitely, I met when I was 16. I met the guy who wrote the theme song to the cartoon Darkwing Duck, and he talked to my class and he asked us what we wanted to do. And everybody said, "Oh, I want to tour music, or I want to write a hit song, or I don't know, I just want to be in someone's band." And in that moment, for some reason, though nobody was watching, I felt like it was important to really be honest with my intention. And I said, "Oh, I want to change the world." And a lot of people laughed at me, and a lot of people snickered. But the guy who was there, he took me seriously. He was like, "Okay, well, you need to figure out the steps to doing that." And I think as I developed in music and began writing and began working on music, this education side always was there, and it always felt this responsibility to be able to give back. And as I got older and started having more experience traveling, where I've had these moments where I've been performing and people have come up to me and said, "Wow, like your music really touched my heart and my soul." Like having these experiences made me realize, like, okay, I can try to go to LA and write a hit song for Beyonce or something like that, or I can really just try to get to the source and touch people. And for me, being able to teach internationally, being able to do programs like this where I get to go into communities that, if you don't know, El Salvador is the murder capital of the world. Go to communities where they're dealing with real issues and provide this space where people can express themselves and feel love and feel joy and feel happiness and escape whatever negative situation is around them. I'm like, that to me is changing the world, and that's what I want to do with music. When I'm back in New York, I have the pleasure of teaching at Carnegie Hall, and I get to work with a lot of students from all over New York City, and some students who are in and out of juvenile detention and court programs. So I get to provide this resource to students who may have gone down an even worse path, but are now engaged in a program that can help to steer them to a different direction. So for me, I can sit in my room and try to write the next hit single, but I really feel like the work that I'm doing is helping to change the world more immediately. And for me, that's my dream. And I always want to release music, and I always want to do, I would love for everyone to know my name, but the most important thing is that I'm affecting people's lives. And when I really realized that it was possible to do that with music, and it was really possible to do that through education, I I just haven't gone back since, and I've used that as the catalyst for all my decisions. And that's why after music school, I went to Harvard and learned, and I moved to New York and got involved with wonderful institutions and wonderful programs like the Next Level program, because I really, more so than make a huge career for myself, I want to be able to have impact on people's lives and help change people's lives. So that, just knowing that music has that power has been kind of the catalyst for me to pursue everything that I've pursued in music.
And you're obviously having an impact on people's lives now, and you're giving them advice as well. But what's the best advice that you've ever received about music?
Man, the best advice. I don't know the best advice, but uh, one piece of advice that always stuck with me is, one of my good friends is a drummer named Joe Dyson, and we went to high school together. And this guy was like the child prodigy drummer, just super super amazing. And I'll never forget this. I just remember we would talk about, oh, what do you want to do? And he was like, do you want to be a sideman? The sideman is basically a musician for hire who plays in someone else's group. He's like, do you want to be a sideman? Do you want to own, do you want to have your own group? And I remember from those conversations, he was always telling me, like, it's better to have your own group. It's better to be your own boss than to be a sideman. And this was when we were in high school and had very little experience of either. But he always just encouraged me, and a lot of people encouraged me to really pursue my own music and really pursue my own voice and my own vision. And I've had the pleasure of being able to tour around the United States with my own groups and travel to other countries with my own groups. And really, there's not a more fulfilling experience. I could be playing with Beyonce or whoever, but to me, there's not a more fulfilling experience to take music that you wrote that means so much to you and perform it around the world and have people connect and resonate with it. And I think it was just, I remember this conversation in the hallway by the elevator, just, my friend Joe telling me, hey, it's better to be your own boss. It's better to create your own music and really push your voice and your vision than to just work from somebody. And this is not to dismiss being the sideman, because I love working with different bands and having new experiences. But there is a joy of, pursuing your own music and being your own artist that is unmatched. And I think if I hadn't had that type of encouragement, I don't think I ever would have had the strength or the fearlessness to pursue my own music and pursue uh, basically being an artist, because it's a lot harder than just being a musician that plays for other people. It's definitely a lot harder, but it's worth it.
And do you have any gear or kind of online resources or apps that you think our listeners should check out that you think are really cool?
Yes. Well, one app that I really, really love is this app called Tutti Music Player, which is basically I worked on this app with a great friend of mine named Darren Hoffman.
Yeah, who we had on the show as well. It's a great app.
Exactly. So that app that kind of changed the game for me, because if you don't know, it's basically this video music player that allows you to watch master musicians play, read their music, solo each instrument, so like select just the individual scream of them, slow a musician down, speed them up, loop them. It's the most like for me it's one of the most amazing like music education tools that's out there. And that for me is like I recorded a lot on it, but I play a lot of different instruments, so it's been cool to be able to watch different instrumentalists play, and not only just like listen to what they're playing, but watch their fingers and really learn, the kind of nuance that you would learn by having a private lesson with somebody. Yeah, and I know he was on the show, so I know he spoke a great
Yeah,
length
it's awesome.
about that.
And I think I just checked that they just launched another one recently of, and I'm trying to remember the album, jazz trumpet player who's won the
Christian Scott, yeah.
Christian Scott, yeah. So Charles, if you could recommend just one record and one book to our listeners, what would they be?
One record and one book. The book would be The Alchemist. That was I can't remember the author right now.
Paul Coelho,
Yeah, yeah. That book, I read that recently on a trip to Morocco. It was my first time going to Africa, and for those who read The Alchemist, you understand why that was very, very important. But I think especially for musicians and artists who are going through the career crisis, or like, is this what I should be doing? Or I think for anybody who wants to figure out like how they should be living their life, or what's their purpose in life, that's a really great book to read. And as far as albums, it's always a hard one. I mean, the album that's had the biggest impact on me is "A Love Supreme" by John Coltrane. I recommend that record to anybody. And it's the same thing. It's about a person really finding their connection to why they play music, and what their purpose is in life. And I think it's such a beautiful and raw and pure expression of somebody's soul that's captured on a record that, I just, if you haven't heard that record, please listen to that record. It's better than any record I can ever recommend, because to me, it's one of the most raw and emotional records you'll ever hear.
And finally, if you woke up tomorrow morning and had to start from scratch, so all you have is you've got your kit and the knowledge, the chops that you've acquired over your years in music, but you have no contacts, you have to start again. How would you restart?
I think I would try to pursue like finding musicians and producers who are really, really, really accomplished. And the hard thing about that is I might just have to go to a jam session, or go to a show, go somewhere where these type of people might congregate. And I would really I wouldn't have fear. I would like let me play for you. Let me let me show you what I can do. Because a lot of things I've learned is that if you're not afraid, if you just willing to show up and be present and show what talent you have, a lot of times people will respect that and can open up a lot of opportunities for you. So I would basically just try to go to wherever the musicians were and play, and try to connect with whoever I could, even if I knew nobody, because I think if you really, really are serious about your craft, you can go anywhere and someone will hear you and they'll recommend you to so-and-so who's making the next big record and needs a drummer or needs this guy. So I would probably do that. But but also the selfish side of me would also probably just want to sit on the beach somewhere and write music.
Well, you're in a nice part of the world this just now as well, so I'm sure there's some nice chill out areas there as well. Hope you get a time to enjoy the country a little bit as well. So we'll finally share the best ways that listeners can connect with you and learn more about what you're working on, your different projects.
Well, I will have my website up in a little bit, which will be charlesburchell.com. I'll use that to kind of get everything together. But don't go there now because it's not up. The best way you can contact me, Twitter and Instagram at BLVKBeats. That's at BLVKBeats. And I'm on SoundCloud, soundcloud.com/Way of the Sword. Just I'm on the social media. Holler at me. I post and document all my work, and I have my website up in a little bit where I'll just kind of curate all the things, all my world travels and all my experiences with music. But yeah, reach out to me on Twitter or Instagram. I will connect. I will say what's up. I'll share my ideas and thoughts with you, and I'll come play at your cousin's bar mitzvah or whatever you want me to do.
Great, Charles. Well, fantastic speaking to you. I wish you all the best for the rest of your the hip-hop diplomacy that you're working on over there. And I look forward to catching you play live either in New York or New Orleans sometime soon.
Thank you. It'll probably be London before that.
There you go. Come and see us in London. Come and see us in London.
Will do.
Hey, James Taylor here again. And if you're interested in living a more creative life, then I'd love to invite you to join me as I share some of the most successful strategies and techniques that high-performing creatives use. I put them all together in a free downloadable ebook that you can get by going to jamestaylor.me. That's jamestaylor.me to get your free downloadable ebook on creativity.